Hey everyone, welcome to Co-Medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Boston, and we're doing something a little different this episode. So Co-Medicine is usually healthcare professionals who do comedy, but I've been thinking lately, should I branch out? Maybe I should have other professionals who do comedy. I don't know. And then I got the chance to meet Lynn Harris, who is a comedian, a writer, a journalist. She's the founder of Gold Comedy in New York, which is a comedy school that focuses on women and non-binary folks. And I just couldn't pass up the opportunity to have her on the show because I know she's just such a wealth of knowledge about comedy. She loves to focus on women in comedy, and she loves to use comedy as a tool of power, which I think is so cool. She understands deeply as a journalist that the way to get people to listen is to make them laugh and to use humor. And so despite the fact that she's not a healthcare professional, I thought she was a perfect guest to be on Co-Medicine. I loved meeting Lynn Harris. I know you will too. Lynn, welcome to Co-Medicine. It's so wonderful to have you on.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
I am too. And actually, we're doing something a little different. We are in season 6. You are my first non-medical guest, but it's been something I've been thinking about doing. And so I love that you're here. So, because I'm kind of interested in talking to people who have not only a medical career and then have switched to comedy, getting into comedy, but people who've had another career and are kind of moving into comedy. So I know you were a journalist and a novelist and a comedian, and now founder of Gold Comedy. You're a stand-up comedian, you're a writer. So we'll get into all of it, but I usually on Co-Medicine start with kind of the more serious side. So if you can just talk about your start as a journalist, and then we'll kind of get moving into comedy.
Sure. And I hope no one's allergic to cats.
Yeah, we love that.
Yeah, hello. Okay. Yes. Okay. So this is great. I'm thrilled to be here. And I'm not a doctor, but I'm really good at Googling symptoms. That's a skill of mine. As with comedy, I was a writer for a long time, as you noted, and a very, very busy journalist for a long time. And as with comedy, when it came to writing, I didn't have a plan. I didn't think about it that much. In other words, I didn't say like, someday I will be the next so-and-so and here's my plan to get there. What it felt more like was inevitable. It's just what I was drawn to. Yeah. So it was just kind of in my bones. It was certainly in my genes as well, genes, because my parents were, involved one way or another with languages, which I could go into later. But it was sort of in my, as was humor. It was it was the water I swam in. So I enjoyed writing. I was good at it. I liked the game of reporting and knowing what you needed. I loved to edit, fix what you wrote. So I was drawn to and I love like people and stories, so I was drawn to all of the things that make writing, especially as a profession. I wasn't much of a journaler. I guess I kept journals, but that wasn't it. I understood it as work as well. And I was always just drawn to it. I certainly do remember that in high school, it's those, other than being a theater nerd, writing was what I was drawn to in terms of both the newspaper and the literary magazine. And I did the same in college. And it's just what I did. I just was pulled toward it like the Millennium Falcon being pulled toward that tractor beam. It's just what I did.
And then you worked as a journalist?
I was actually there was a lot of overlap and a lot of cross-pollination.
Okay.
So both in terms of the craft and in terms of the timeline.
Okay.
So I also did a lot of, performing in high school and college along with the writing, and usually was the funny one, not the only funny one, but, less than the romantic lead. I was the wacky redhead. Even when I was blonde, it's all fake. And when I started out as, just as a journalist, just sort of taking any jobs that came my way, which was smart, which is the right thing to do. It didn't matter if it was like, but it's not my voice, but it's not what I care about. Doesn't matter. It's a skill and it's a product and you have to learn it and you have to produce it. At the same time, I had started doing stand-up, and over time, I worked hard enough and was fortunate enough that as I built my skills and built my network, I was eventually able to really be able to write what I wanted to write about in my own voice. But it took a long time. And because that's what, it just takes a long time to become an expert, and my voice, as it turned out, was particularly, or the voice I was most interested in honing and did hone was the one where you can write about serious topics with the appropriate sense of humor.
Okay.
And what I mean by appropriate is not making fun of things that are terrible, knowing your audience so that the jokes you do make that are sort of not the thing, but around the thing will land. But also ways that you can, and people say this, I'm not the only one to say this, in ways that can kind of, for lack of a better word, sugarcoat tough issues and invite people in to a conversation that they might not have otherwise, whether it's about, abortion or, back then LGBT issues, whatever, things that people get weird about, you can invite them in using humor in a way that doesn't undermine the seriousness of the issue, but rather opens the door at least to more conversations. So I was doing that, eventually doing more of that kind of writing, especially for places like Salon, which was a good home for it, while I was doing stand-up and blending the whole thing with a project turned into a whole business that I co-created with my creative partner called Breakup Girl, who is a superhero who helps people with romantic emergencies. It was one of the earliest internet success stories, and it turned into a massive sort of multimedia, multi-platform experience. But really, to answer your question, it blended. Breakup Girl had comic adventures that I co-developed with my creative partner, who did most of the writing on those and all of the animation and comic book drawing. He's a genius. Name is Chris Kolb. But I wrote the advice column, which also had a big cult following at the time in the 90s. And it was a very writerly advice column that also sought to make a difference while also being funny. And then last thing I'll say about that is that we also created a live show called Breakup Girl Live that was at the time the longest running variety show at Gotham Comedy Club in New York City. And it was kind of like the Muppet Show, where there's like a show, the show is about the show, and like things go wrong, and like there's a villain, and and so that's also where, and the whole show had a story, like a script and a story in a writer's room. And my point being, I'll pause because there's other stuff I could say, but my point being that during those years through the 90s, the stuff I did by day and the stuff I did by night was very much bound up together.
Okay. I love that, actually. That's really cool. I sometimes, maybe not as much, but I sometimes feel like things kind of weave together for me as well. Mm-hmm. Like with my speaking, there's always jokes and like storytelling. And like, so I do think these things can kind of feed each other, and you can kind of use those skills across different platforms, whatever those skills may be. Okay. Well, I want to talk about your stand-up. I know you're very multifaceted. I think I would say, like within the arts, you're writing, you're a journalist, you created a school, you're a stand-up comedian. I'm going to miss something, but I know you've done so many things, but maybe let's just focus on stand-up comedy for a bit and sort of how you got your start in stand-up. I know you've been in New York that whole time. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, well, I was in Boston from 90 to 94. And then I moved to New York. I mean, these are like the old days. I moved to New York in 94, and I've been in New York ever since. So I have dual citizenship. Let's put it that way.
In two cities. I love it. Well, and both like great comedy cities, I would say.
Great comedy cities. Yeah.
I'm in Canada, so I've been to Boston once. It's my namesake, but I've never been there as a comedian, but I have visited New York. I would love to come back. I felt like it was like quite easy to kind of jump in as a visitor to like a couple shows and stuff, and people were quite welcoming. So I really love that. But can you just tell me your experience coming up in the 90s as a stand-up comedian in, I guess we'll say New York, but Boston too?
Yeah, I did start in Boston. And again, it was just the kind of thing where after college, I was like, and now's the part where I take a stand-up class. Like, yeah, I didn't think about it much. I just did it. And classes are great because if nothing else, they just provide accountability and they make you do your first show. Yeah. Like, if nothing else, and because that's hard. Although your second show is the hardest. Yeah. Because all your friends come to the first show. It's the second one where you're like, tap, is this thing on? But it was a good class. It was fine. It was absolutely did the job. And I just started doing the thing. I mean, back then, there still are bringer shows, but back then we had to send postcards in the mail to get people to come to our bringer shows. There's George Carlin might say, we had to make an oil painting, So honestly, I don't know how we did it. All I know is what helped is that I could stay up later then than I can stay up now. And I was lucky enough to find my people, to find other comics. And, this is not unusual. It's just good. That, to find people that I really vibed with, we were all supportive as opposed to competitive. We booked each other on each other's shows. We cracked each other up. We made each other better comedians. And again, not unusual. It's like necessary, which I've tried to kind of recreate writ large with Gold Comedy, which is, yes, as you said, a comedy school, but really it's the whole package. So that's kind of what I've tried to sort of build on steroids with Gold, which is, yes, a comedy school insofar as that we have classes all the time. We are here to help you build your skills either from the start or starting, if you're already well on your way. There's always skills to build, but the classes are nestled in a big, supportive, collaborative community where you can find your people. If you live in Boston or New York already, you probably have some people, right? But we're all over the country. So maybe you find more people, or maybe you live in a smaller town, so you find your people elsewhere, but they're always there for you online. So it's a professional network in that sense, also with access to industry folks and introductions. So that part was so important to me when I was doing stand-up. And I know how important it is for everyone, that I wanted to make sure that is baked into the most important, sort of value that Gold can deliver, because it was just magical for me. I'm still friends with, many of them have gone on to be famous. Many of them are doing totally other jobs and everything in between, or jobs where skills have transferred, as you kind of alluded to earlier. But it was really my crew that was the best part of doing stand-up. So I really kind of wound down stand-up a while ago. I did it for about 10 years and I didn't quit. I just kind of slowed down because I'm not really a night person. So I never decided to leave. I just realized I haven't done stand-up in a while, haven't I? And it's not the kind of thing you can just randomly do. You're either doing it or you're not, because of the chops. You just got it, as you know. But I was never not in or near comedy in some way, because as you know, comedy takes many forms and there are many jobs that one can have that require or involve being a creator or producer of comedy in some way. So I was never not doing that. So stand-up's a piece of that whole puzzle.
It's something I struggle with too. Someone will ask me if I want to be on a show at 10:30 at night. I'm no, I really don't.
Is it in my bed?
I've noticed a trend. There's a few matinees popping up. I've noticed this trend, and I'm like,
brunch jokes.
I'm all in. I'm like, yes, this is great. So let's talk a little bit more about Gold Comedy. Are you the sole founder of Gold Comedy?
I have a co-founder named Ami Vora, who is the perfect balance, because she is an obsessive consumer of comedy and comedy adjacent things and knows the whole world. But she's the sort of business and tech nerd that balances out I'm sort of the producer, performer producer nerd. So it's not just that I'm I just make jokes and you do the business. It's not that, we both, but our skills complement each other a lot. So yeah, but I founded it myself. I brought her on as a co-founder at once I had kind of landed on my vision and path for the business.
Okay. And something else, which I think we both are really interested in, is kind of women in comedy. I know Gold Comedy is I don't know, you can maybe explain it, but it's centering on women and non-binary folks. And I think, it's getting better. I'm sure it's better than the 90s, but there is still that sort of obvious, pretty much any show you go to, it's just very predominated by white cis male comics, and then there'll be sort of token other groups represented in token women. And I think it's very hard. That can be very hard. I've created a show here in Ottawa called the Women's Monthly, where I'm trying to showcase female comics. And so I'm trying to do a small part of this, but I'm very interested in this subject. So I would just love to hear, you've been in the business for a long time. So how did you come about this? How are you trying to sort of promote and shocase women in comedy? Yeah.
And first, let me just stipulate that it is so much better than it used to be. And by it, I mean so many things. So I could go, women can be Ghostbusters now, and there are a lot of women all over the place doing all sorts of things. And I mean, just look at all the comedy shows on streamers now, whether they're stand-up shows or comedies or dramedies or whatever, when Girls Five Eva. I mean, just to name one, it's not only driven by women, they're middle-aged.
Yeah, God forbid.
What? So let me just stipulate, everyone getting ready to write their angry letters about but there are two famous women comics named Amy. Yes, I know it, but I'm stipulating, and I can give you way more examples if you want of how much better it is than it was before. Give it. Done. Yes. Also, a Gold member and friend of mine was in town from Louisville last week. And we were let's go see what shows there are at such and such, a very, very well-known and established club in New York City. And we looked at the lineup for 2 Sunday nights ago, and they run a bunch of different spaces. So it was 6 shows on a Sunday night. And we looked at all the lineups for each of the 6 shows, and each one had one woman. Yeah. And I'm just like, they're not trying. Like when you see an all dude panel, it's like asleep at the wheel. Like it's not, this is just, someone's not trying. It's not hard. So there's still like, and that hasn't changed much. What they don't do as much anymore is like, when I was in the 90s, this happened to all of us. If you were the only woman on a lineup, they'd be like, and now we got a lady coming to the stage, yeah. So, and I'm like, where, and
it's horrible.
It's horrible. And it sucks for so many reasons. First of all, I'm no lady. Second of all, it's like if the lineup is all dudes and even if they don't say that you're a lady, then, all the dudes have 8 minutes to prove that they're funny. And the one woman has 8 minutes to prove that women are funny. We see a lot of successful, visible women in comedy for sure. I don't know the answer to this, but query whether they're getting paid as much as the men in many cases. Query whether it took them twice as long to get to that place. Knowing which clubs to avoid because, someone's scummy or someone's not going to help you out if you get into a jam with one scummy dude, right? Just query how much harder they had to work to get to that spot. And also let me stipulate, before everyone's getting out writing an angry letter, let me also stipulate that comedy is hard for everyone. Comedy is hard for that white dude over there. Absolutely. Yeah. And also we love, and also, the white dudes deserve to do comedy as much as we did. Like, it's like everyone should do comedy. Like, so we're really talking, sure, about fairness because women are people and comedy is work. But we're also talking about what if comedy was better with more diverse faces, voices, viewpoints, which we know, that's like, I'm not saying anything insightful. We know this from every business that there is, that the business runs better and makes a better product when you don't have a bunch of people who all with the same life experience who all agree about everything, right? Like we know this, and we know it for sure about comedy. So, Cameron Esposito said many years ago in one of the articles that kind of inspired me to kind of I was already on my way to kind of, I hate this word, ideating gold or iterating on the idea of gold. The article that she wrote pointed out that, and this is like a very specific way of saying that a rising tide lifts all boats. She was like, more diverse lineups are also better for the cis white dudes. Because if you have a whole lineup of, straight white dudes who, even if they're real good, which like, let's assume, they still, you as an audience, like they still kind of blend together. Not their fault for you as the audience member. But let's say there are 2 white dudes in a lineup, or God forbid, 1 in this whole lineup of all this, this whole melting pot lineup. That white dude is going to destroy, and people are going to remember him and think about him specifically in a way that they're not going to if the lineup is all, Chad and Bob, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's good for everyone. And so I forget where I was going to wind up, but these are my thoughts.
I love it. Something else I think a lot about, and I'm trying to think about with my show, is just the audience, because I feel like if it's a lineup of all like 30-year-old white men, people talk about what they know, right? So I feel like the audience, even if they're not being like, again, like you sort of have those crawly, like even if they're not being particularly misogynistic, there's a lot of comedy that is that way or feels quite negative towards women, but it's not a woman's experience. So a middle-aged woman going to that, with, seeing a 30-year-old white guy talk about porn, because like a lot of that talk about, his dick, blah, blah, blah. Maybe it's funny, like it could be funny, but it's not like someone goes, oh, I feel seen or I relate to this, and so I feel like then you self-perpetuate that the comedy audiences become the audience for that type of comedy. And then the women are staying at home. And then it's like, well, women aren't funny. Well, they're maybe not funny to that audience. Maybe, hopefully they still are. Hopefully everyone can kind of enjoy everyone's perspective. But if you curate an audience that wants to see that comedy, it's harder to break in. And then if the one woman is not successful in that audience, I feel like that will like limit her desire to do more comedy or bring more people in. So like, I feel like it almost is like, we have to diversify the audience as well.
Yeah, someone said that about improv also, which again, much better than it was before, obviously. And also improv also gave us some of our female icons. Yeah. I wish I could give credit to the person who said this, but someone I either was reading or talking to said or heard speak was saying that like that happens with improv audiences, that dudes, let's start with some improv teams, which used to be much more dude heavy than they are now. Yeah. But like your basic improv team, like dudes bring their friends who are dudes. Dudes look up at the stage and say, I could do that. So they sign up. And then they're the next male heavy improv team. And so like, it's not like no one's doing anything wrong.
No.
You know, there's a world in which institutions that are forming teams could figure out how to make them more diverse, but that's what we're trying to do. But in fact, we don't have improv teams, but we have digital teams. We have sketch teams that are all women, non-binary creators who, you know, we love these guys, you know, Lonely Island and I Think You Should Leave, you know, SNL's folks, their digital teams. Oh, great. We love them. They're all dudes. Like what in the, 2025? So we created, 3 times that many digital teams with a billionth of the budget of SNL, so like it can be done, people. And so then, right, when people see all, and it's not like our teams do only things on like women's topics,
right?
Yeah, they do funny stuff. So, and then when our part of our hope is when non-dude creators see our teams doing funny things, they say, oh, I can do that. I'd like to do that. How do I sign up? So, and then we're also putting that content out of the world, full stop, as an end in itself, just more content that's not, no matter how funny they are, more content that's not just, straight white dudes. All 5 late night hosts, by the way, are, cis white dudes. We love them, but like, come on.
Taylor's show did not get renewed.
Right. And the soapbox piece of it for me though is, this is my lane because I care about, obviously I'm a big feminist. I care about comedy. I've told you all the reasons that, I think this is important, but like at kind of a meta level, what's all kind of the molten core underneath it is the idea that comedy is power. When you make people laugh, you make people listen. And whoever's, in charge of the joke, whoever's got the mic, whoever's, running the writers or whatever it is, has authority. So if comedy is power and more women and non-straight white dudes have that power, then we're helping build a world that listens to them too. So that's why I never say we're like empowering women or like, I'm like, we have enough power. I'm not giving women a voice. Like, you have one. Thank you. We just need people to listen to it and to, paradox, play on words, to, use comedy to make sure that we're taken seriously.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. No, that's really cool. I mean, I think about that a lot too, as far as like, how do we use comedy? And so I do like the idea of comedy and power, because if you do look at the late night hosts right now, I love them all very much, but they're definitely speaking truth to power right now. But we don't have a woman doing that on that platform at the moment.
Nope. And it's puzzling. It's honestly puzzling. It feels a little bit like, playing it safe with, well, it's a tricky political time, so we've got to run another old straight white dude. It feels a little bit like that. But then you get into kind of a cycle where if hiring only straight white dudes, you kind of prove your point that they can be successful. And then and again, I don't really know the economics. I didn't see the marketing plans. I can't say this for sure. I don't know. But as with certain women's sports and other comps, sure, they'll like throw a woman up there, but then like, I don't know, does she get the same marketing budget and effort as Conan? Probably not. And so then when her show doesn't get renewed or doesn't have the numbers that it wants, then you're like, well, duh. So it's another one of those kind of vicious cycles that we've been talking about. Again, I don't know exactly. Yeah. That is what happened. I can't prove it, but like it feels like a familiar pattern that's replicated in other industries.
Yeah, and then I mean, I don't know. Taylor Tomlinson's show is a very different format, different time. Yeah, and maybe because she was so young, they were trying a different format. But yeah, you do think, well, if we had, I don't know, Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, someone like that in a more like structured, would that have gone differently, and could there be then more female comics in those roles, like some more seasoned comic, I guess I'd say. I don't know. I don't really know. I love Taylor Tomlinson.
Sure.
I think she's fabulous, but it's just like, oh yeah, you do wonder, like, kind of wish that had gone better. I don't know. Yeah. And there've been so many. obviously Samantha Bee, but all,
yes. Lily Singh. There've been so many that have kind of never quite, Sam B did for sure, but not forever, know? And she had a slightly different format and vibe, from standard talk show. But Ellen did okay during the day. Anyway, you got to watch Hacks.
Hacks gives us hope. Yeah, Ellen did okay. Ellen did okay until she didn't.
But just someone. Yes. And I'm not saying it has to be like a wholesome white lady. I'm just saying that like that, there's that. Like, she was huge.
Yeah. And then she was mean, or I don't know. There was other males who were also mean.
Worse than me, but he's a genius.
To me,
Yes.
yeah. So I don't know. I always kind of like question. I do have a joke about Ellen that I feel a bit guilty about because, well, my hair is a bit longer, but when my hair was shorter, like people just always tell me I look like Ellen. So I would say, oh, people say I remind them of Ellen, mostly because I'm mean. But there's a question in my head. I know I feel bad. I feel guilty saying that joke, but it's also because people say I look like Ellen until I address it. So I have to address it. But I always am like, was she mean? I have no idea. Or was she just a girl boss kind of doing a girl boss thing? Or was she just a bit disconnected and she didn't realize what was going on? And I have all those questions.
Impossible to know. It's impossible. It makes me nuts. You know?
Yeah, it makes me nuts
it's
too.
Just,
yeah.
It's like a giant game of like media telephone, you know, where like we have no idea what the first thing was and how, you know, when everyone started whispering to each other, how it changed. Like, it's gone.
It happened quickly, you know, and I do. Yeah, it does make me wonder. I had the experience, like I was the only female surgeon for a while at the University of Florida. Yeah, I like things a certain way. And like someone who was my friend was talking about me and he said, oh, she's a bit of a prima donna. I was like, really? Like I like things a certain way in the OR, like every surgeon. So
it's surgery. It's not like I like my matcha a certain way. Jeez Louise.
No, I know. But I was like, it was just so funny because there was other surgeons I worked with who would yell, make people cry, throw shit at people in the OR. And I'm like, okay, I'm a prima donna because I like this one instrument or I like this way or, you know, and I was like, that's so interesting. So then I think maybe that's why, you know, when you're in those positions as a woman, easy to say, oh, she's a bitch, she's difficult. I mean, I don't, these are all things people just said about me, Lynn. But yeah, and so I think that because I've been in those, obviously I wasn't a famous host of a show, I'll be honest, but I was in a position of like authority or whatever. And then you are labeled. And I just am like, I don't know if a man would be labeled the same way, or maybe she's really mean. Like maybe she's actually mean. I don't know. We can't know.
You know, also both can be true. Maybe she's mean. Also, a man would not be labeled the same way.
Yeah.
Or it just wouldn't be an issue if it was a dude. Like, you know, so like both can be true and we'll never know.
We'll never know. She really loves animals. And I don't know, in my experience, the big animal lovers are less mean. I don't know.
There was that tiger guy. Was he mean though? I don't know. I don't remember. Mean.
I think he was just unhinged. Okay. Yeah, I guess he did try to kill someone. So maybe.
Oh, fair.
Allegedly. I want to thank our Season 6 title sponsor, Covet. Covet is an AI co-pilot for veterinary professionals, and I'm excited to talk to you about it because this is the AI co-pilot that we're using at the hospital where I work. There's so many great uses for this. I get a lot of referrals sent in with a ton of PDFs and sometimes just like 12 years of the dog's medical record sent to me. 12 years, you guys. I don't have time to read through all of that. Sometimes my records are sent to me in French. That's challenging for me. That's okay. Covet can deal with it. It takes everything, turns it into a nice summarized document so I can review everything before I go in the exam room. And then once I'm in the exam room, Covet can listen to the entire consultation. I can talk about my physical exam findings. I can talk to the client. We can make a plan together. All of this gets summarized better and faster, honestly, than what I can do myself. And there's a lot of cool features in the app. One of them is you can call a client from the app directly. It will listen to both sides of a conversation and then it will summarize the whole thing. Again, better and faster than I can. This has literally saved me hours every day, getting my paperwork done, getting me out in time, and also just decreasing my general stress level because I'm not worried, oh, did I get that all? Did I get the right leg? Did I get everything recorded? Am I going to forget something? And it's a lot nicer to like focus on your patient and focus on your client rather than having to constantly be turning away from them and writing stuff down. So check out Covet. It is fabulous. I want to thank them for everything they do to support the veterinary profession and also for supporting this podcast. Okay, I want to talk a bit about comedy being power because I know you've been involved with a human rights organization called Breakthrough.
So this goes back to my saying that like I was always in comedy somehow, making comedy things. And even better, or even, you know, even an even happier place is, you know, being involved in comedy that in some way is aligned with social justice goals. That there's there are a million forms that can, not a million, but there's many forms that can take. And so I was very fortunate to land at Breakthrough, which the structure has changed and now it works they work mostly in India. But at the time I worked in the US office, and what Breakthrough does is use pop culture and pop culture tools to make human rights issues real and relevant and actionable. And that was especially potent in the United States because we don't really think about human rights in the United States, right? We see, I mean, sure we do now.
Yes, you do.
But we think about civil rights, right?
Yeah.
When we think about like human rights is this thing where we, you know, write letters about someone wrongfully in prison for, you know, writing an article. Oops, that just happened.
Oh, yeah, that's happening now.
And so what we got to do, and I was directly involved in a lot of this, was we worked a lot, for example, on what we then called violence against women, and worked on ways to make the issue, to engage men around the issue in a way that was, and this is going to sound weird, but fun. So for example, I created, and you know, with a lot of help, a series of comedy shows that raised a ton of money, got a lot of eyeballs online, called Dudes Against Violence Against Women, because duh. And so one of our taglines was like, finally, an all-male comedy lineup on purpose. And because we got dudes who, you know, who were really engaged on the issue and were willing to kind of talk indirectly, you know, to other dudes, being like, this is a thing that we need to speak up about. Like, we're not, the women, it's not their job, guys. But we use comedy to make, because understandably, a dude doesn't want to be like yelled at or scolded or told that he's, you know, the bad guy. But we do want to inspire people to like be part of the solution, you know, so we produced those comedy shows. We also created animations that were shown at major sporting events, including NASCAR races, the Indy 500, the big screen out at Lambeau Field outside at Notre Dame, like really big venues where we got to create animations that were like funny depictions of dudes calling out other dudes for being jerks. And the idea was be that guy, you know, and they weren't like violent or threatening, or they weren't supposed to like scare men. Yeah. They were supposed to be like, what if you were the one who was like, hey, dude, stop? Or like, by extension, this didn't say this, but by extension, what if you were the comic who went to the booker and said, like, do you think you could book more women? Because I just feel like there's no women on my shows. You know, what if you were that guy? And that's the idea. So anyway, bring it back to stand up. But so I got to work on a lot of campaigns like that, and a lot of campaigns that really involved. We did a really successful campaign around oh man, all I can think of is Joe Arpaio, and he's a sheriff, not a boxer. But there was the big boxing match between the guy and the other guy, and the guy was a known abuser. It was only on pay-per-view, and we organized like a very funny tongue-in-cheek campaign that invited people to do literally anything else. And because boycotts are kind of silly and they don't work, sorry, opinion. But This was, no, it wasn't a boycott. It's not going to do anything. But we got people talking about, and we invited people to tell us what they'd be doing instead of watching the fight. And we made it fun. And whatever our hashtag was, like, you know, trended that day. And like really, because like this guy, you know, had a right to fight. I mean, he had been convicted of domestic violence, but he had a right to fight. But we wanted to just not, what we wanted to do was not normalize the fact that this guy just not normalize him as a hero. Like, you know, he can, you know, go on, do his thing, whatever. We just wanted to have also this conversation over here saying, how do we talk about this? Like, how do we talk about when someone is like good at their job and maybe even has done their time, but like, do we pretend they didn't? Do we erase that they beat up women? So we were able to kind of do that in a jaunty way with this, like, do literally anything else that other than watch campaign. And it got a lot of traction and got press. And so it created a whole conversation that was going on that was kind of whispers otherwise. So we had fun with things that weren't fun.
Yeah, I love the concept of trying to make something, because when you first said it, I'm like, okay, cool. How do you make that funny? But those are two great examples, right? You talk around it, or you just remove it one step, or you just, you're kind of lightly making fun. Okay, a question just popped into my head because Louis C.K. is touring again, toured in Toronto, sold out, I think within 20 minutes. I loved his comedy, you know, and I was less into comedy than I am now when I was really watching him, but I found him brilliant. Like I found his jokes absolutely brilliant. I loved them. So what do you think of that? Like, I mean, he's selling tickets, and people have the right, he has the right to do that.
Yep. I mean, I guess it just proves that you can't joke about anything anymore, and you'll be a total failure if the world turns against you for your past mistakes. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just like, can we calm down? Like, he's fine.
He's fine.
He's fine. Yeah. Louis C.K. will be fine, everybody. He's okay. I mean, maybe not inside. I can't look, I can't look into his soul, but I also think he's, I mean, I still I have two things that I say all the time that are 100% Louis C.K. One is I'm in a chair in the sky. And the other is, I have a peach. And context doesn't matter, but I still quote him all the time. He's fine. As though everyone needs to calm down. Not everyone. People need to calm down about the idea that like, well, I mean, you destroyed Louis C.K. You couldn't say anything. But he's a genius. But he's a genius. Okay, he's fine. He has every right. He's going to find his audience. He found them. Yes. He's fine. Yeah. I'm fine too. Guess what? I'm fine. I love his old stuff. Yeah. I'm not interested in him anymore. I am also fine.
Okay. So you don't like you feel like, he's got the right to perform. People have the right to go see him.
I'm not diminishing anything that he did. Yeah. I'm just saying that anyone who thinks that we should excuse him for being a genius, first, no, thank you. Yes. Like, I'm sorry, excuse him because he's a genius. Yeah. No, thank you. But also, what does not excusing him mean?
Right. I don't know.
I have now formed a new opinion of him, which is yuck. But my opinion doesn't matter at all. Yeah. And that's fine too, because I'm not his audience. He has his audience. I'm not it. We're all fine. He lives his day without thinking about me. I live my day without thinking about him until now.
Sorry.
And like, it's fine. But like, I just, the idea that you can't say anything or that men are being silenced is hilarious to me.
Yeah. You can't compliment a woman anymore.
But the idea that he was ruined. Yeah. I mean, he did have to pause, which he did for 5 minutes. He did have to rebrand. So does everybody. He now is, he now has a sort of a stigma, which is appropriate. But did he ruin his career? No, he's fine. I didn't sell at Madison Square Garden yesterday, or wherever he's like, and then you have to think about like, it's not just, did he do a bunch of gross things, which apparently, yes. What I kind of, my grudge, in addition to that, and this is broader than just Louis C.K., who was particularly florid about it, but like how many people who knew this was his style, like how many women, and of course, like he actually did help a bunch of women, like it's all weird, it's like, men do that. They do this weird penance when they're actually bad, blah, blah, like pre-penance, okay, fine. But like, who are all the women who already knew, because people know that he was scummy to some women and avoided him and therefore avoided certain shows, avoided certain bookers, avoided certain lineup, avoided certain opportunities. Yeah. So all the women who escaped being like harassed by him, but who chose not to engage and therefore, sure, they found other opportunities, but that's one that was sort of unfairly, kind of withheld from them by the universe. So I'm also curious about, like, there's no way to ever measure that kind of impact. So, and that was happening while nobody was, silencing him. It was women who were keeping their distance at their own, in certain ways, detriment, you know? So anyway, he's fine.
All right. I was just curious. I was just thinking about it because he was just in Canada, and
it's fine. I mean, I don't like him. There's a lot of people I don't like. So and I think he's gross, and I'm really, I felt like really kind of personally like, dude. Yeah. Like with like Joss Whedon, who's not the same, who apparently didn't like harm anybody, but is still kind of scummy. And I'm like, not you. Like where with other ones, you're like, oh, well, of course,
obviously,
just like what a bummer. But Genius, I will go to the mat on this one. Genius is, I'll go to the mat tentatively because I also have my blind spots. Like I'm obsessed with Prince, and I will not, like, I know that he like apparently treated Sinead O'Connor, with whom I'm also obsessed, very badly. Like I've heard all these stories, and I'm still like la 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 la. So I totally get also that people, because we are not made of wood, can have our blind spots. So if you have a blind spot like that, then by all means, please continue to go see Louis C.K. That's fine. Just the way I'm going to still listen to Prince. But in general, I think the principle that we should start from, no matter where our blind spots emerge, is that genius is not an excuse.
I would agree.
Just
with
watch
that.
Hannah Gadsby's first show, and you will agree if you haven't already. And she makes a very similar point, much more eloquently than I just did, but same idea with Picasso and other dudes like that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love her. Okay, sorry, that was like a little. I just was really curious about your thoughts because you.
Well, no, I get very worked up about that.
Okay, let's talk about Persisticon because I love the name, which you are the co-founder of. So the goal is to raise money to help elect progressive women in the United States. but using comedy and art. So tell me about Persisticon.
Yeah, we've been a little dormant for a while. First of all, our most recent show that we had planned was actually the one that we had to cancel for the pandemic. And we were like, we'll be back in 6 weeks. So there are a bunch of us who are co-founders we're all friends and neighbors here in Brooklyn. And during Trump 1.0 decided that a good political strategy was to make sure that we elect, specifically progressive women, but also specifically pro-abortion women. That went well. And we also needed like joy and community and all those things. And so we created a very kind of an event with community at its heart in a very cool club or whatever they are called, the Bell House, which has a big lobby. So we were able to like also have local vendors and make it. That's where the con part came from.
Okay.
And then we were able, with our sort of combined connections with like, it's me and then Leslie King, who's married to John Glazer, who is the annoying city councilman. He does a lot of things. He loves gear, and he also is the annoying city councilman from Eagleton on Parks and Rec. Like you know him. He's great. And so, his wife and Theo Kogan, who was the lead singer of Lunatics. So like we all have showbiz, and she also does like makeup to the stars. So we all have sort of showbiz connections. So we were able, or many of us do, and we were able to like create some insane lineups and sell out all the time with these lineups, but also really support like artists in the community to get, to promote that, have them design our stuff, but then really promote them. And, down to the caterers in the green room for the talent, like really promoting local like just like that. So it became kind of a real institution. We did other side events too, with partnerships with other organizations that were kind of, female led, women led, and mostly political. And we raised a ton of money for like Emily's List and She Should Run and some local feminist environmental organizations, et cetera. So we just had breakfast recently because we've all been just kind of like flat out, for the first quarter of this endless, from the first, 2,100 days, but we're plotting to come back.
Canada's excited. Yeah. We're watching. We're like, hey, when are they going to do something?
I know.
I'm sorry. I just like when I look down and I'm like, are they going to do something soon?
Are they going to do something? Yeah. I know. That's how we feel. And in fairness, the Democrats could be doing a more cohesive and louder job, 100%. But in fairness, it's been really, I've worked in advocacy and grassroots stuff for a long time, not as a leader, but as a as a leader and as a very sort of, strategic participant. And you got to know what your theory of change is, right? You got to know what your angle is. And so it's been so hard to figure out what's the Jenga piece, what's the Jenga piece for us to go for, that could make a difference and it's been so in fairness. And then we need someone to sort of help, we need leaders to sort of help us figure this out. But I think it's okay, other than frustration with Democratic leaderships, not all of them. I think it's been okay that we've taken a beat to figure it out.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I was maybe being unfair, but it is a weird thing because, I've been at we call it Elbows Up in Canada, like a protest. It's just to make our point that we're a sovereign nation in Canada. But I was like, and I know there's been protests in the States, but like, why aren't they protesting like every day? But maybe it's just too overwhelming. I don't know. And maybe, I don't know. I know what it's like. So,
and it's also like hard to know. And I'm not saying we shouldn't protest or be out every day, but it's also hard to know, like, to whom? To whom are we protesting? Who is the person of power that we are saying, if you don't X, we will Y? Like, who is that? Like, it used to be that we could, in the good old days of, before Roe versus Wade or whatever, we knew that we could protest. We could lean on, we could threaten non-pro-choice politicians, or we could, whatever, like where's the weak link or where's the powerful link that we can aim at. And it's so hard to know what that is now.
Yeah. Okay. No, I'm excited. I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see what happens. I also love.
And the answer is comedy.
I actually do think that's true. I think comedy is a great way to communicate and hopefully create a movement. I think it's great.
Helps.
It helps. Yes.
A sign, a good protest sign. That's part of comedy.
Yeah. I had a protest sign that said "Hands off our beaver." It got a lot of attention.
There you go.
Yes.
Exactly.
I made t-shirts and it was very fun. Okay. I have to make a confession.
Please.
Because I knew about Gold Comedy because my husband was like, hey, do you want to get a membership? And I was checking it out. And it was just a time I was preparing for a Fringe show at the time. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to put the time in. I'm still probably going to become a member and stuff. But I was worried about joining. And like, I try to always keep signing up for classes, like whether it's improv classes or acting classes. Like I like to always have something on the go. I've been doing a lot of solo show classes online, the Barrow Group, which has been actually incredible. Yeah. And it's so cool to take a class in New York, but you're not in New York. I think it's amazing. So if you can just speak to kind of to me, but also just in general, like if there's someone who's a comedian or thinking of comedy, like, I guess, like, what is it, if you join Gold Comedy, like, what does someone get from that? Or what is the advantages of being a part of that?
Yeah, no, thanks. That's not a confession. That's like advertorial. So the advantages, so let's start with putting in the time and like sort of the, the price benefit, the benefit of like how much you spend versus how much what you get, right? So the way and I was speaking earlier about the way we really focus on community as in the supportive and collaborative sense. And then by community, we also mean like, if you're in what we call the Gold fam, if you're one of our members, like we introduce you to people, we hire you for things, we help you get hired for like, it's a professional network that exists between whatever classes you might be taking, between and among whatever events you might be attending. So, and that is all for one annual subscription price. And we do it that way to underscore that, like, it's not just like, oh, hi, I'm taking a class, bye-bye, great class. Again, which is fine if that's what you want.
Yeah.
Our core classes are included in the membership price, which is currently $500. So if you come and take 1.5 classes, you've already paid.
Right.
The whole thing has already paid for itself, and then you're like, but there's all these other things I could do. And so we have a constant rotation of classes that are actually friendly to novices, but also totally appropriate for not novices. We balance it out. So, and we have classes that people take several times. Our stand-up boot camp, like people take it over and over, even if they know like the facts, they take it for the ability, for the, I'll write another type 5. I just need the structure, people. And then all of this sort of alchemy happens because you're just involved in this community. So for example, we have a premium class on solo shows taught by Iris Barr, who is on Hacks and Curb Your Enthusiasm. She's amazing. That's a premium class, but a few Goldies who didn't know each other before, who are all from Boston, had taken a different class that we offer on a regular basis called Comedy About Trauma. And their instructor, Carolyn Castilla, who also has a show that's a comedy about her own trauma, which is hilarious. It's called Chuck. You should see it. 3 of her students from Boston who met in her class, she was like, you guys are ready to do an hour. And one of them worked on it in our solo show class. Others worked on it with her and on their own. And they did a 3-night series of solo shows in Boston with that, because of the classes they took at Gold, and having met each other, and because they had the skills and the encouragement and the community, the structure to do it. And a couple Goldies came from like Colorado, DC. I went to
my God.
And the audience was full of Goldies who had never met before or who had. And so just things happen in like this comedy crucible that we create. And we have Q&As every Wednesday with comedy pros and celebrities. So we've had the entire lead cast of Somebody Somewhere now. We've had Bridget Everett and Marie Hill and Jeff Hiller, and we've had Margaret Cho, Rachel Dratch, and Bloom. Rachel Dratch is an advisor. So you get, info and inspo from your idols, and also from people who have jobs in comedy that you didn't know existed, but now you want, whether it's in development or production or, TV writing, pitching. We teach a really successful class on pitching that, and I'll circle back with this, that really directly enables people who just have not been taught how to pitch to TV and film executives to pitch and get their stories out there, their spaces, their voices, their stories out there and into development, and ideally one day onto the, big and small screens. And that class in particular, it's taught by Ryan Elizabeth Cunningham, who, no big deal, producer on Broad City, Search Party, Inside Amy Schumer. Her theory of change is, I just need to teach them how to pitch. Folks have amazing ideas, and most of them have day jobs that they're not quitting. A lot of them are like, that's not true. Some of them are like, I'm a writer, I'm a comic, this is what I'm doing. And also this is I got to learn how to pitch my pilot and write my show, et cetera, et cetera. And then there are people who are like not quitting their day jobs. They're doctors. They're maybe some of them work in content, but they're not comics. They're novelists, et cetera, who are like, I have a story on my heart, or I have an obsession that I need to, that I know is a show, or my family is a show, or whatever it is. And their only thing is that they literally just have not been taught how to pitch it the right way to the right people. And by giving them those skills, those, alums from that class have gone on to get representation, win festivals, win awards, shoot their proofs of concept. One or two, several shows are actually at least two shows are in development. So we're just widening the funnel by providing those skills. And so anyway, that's another thing we do. So everything from just being able to go to knowing that you have a friendly open mic to go to every Monday, to really, getting your pitch ready for Hollywood. We offer it all in a space where we can promise it's really all genders, but what we promise, because your gender is whatever you tell me it is, but what I can promise is no bro vibe.
Right. That's so funny you say that, because my show is kind of like that, because I'm not going to restrict anyone, like who's on the show or who comes to the show, but I don't want that. I don't want people to feel like shit.
That is such a good goal.
I'm like, I want the women and anyone who comes in the audience to have a fun night. It doesn't have to be the best night of their life. I just want them to have fun, and I don't want them to feel like shit when they leave. I'm like, that's pretty much my goal of my comedy show. So far, so good. 2 for 2.
We should all have that goal. Maybe more people don't have that goal. It's a really low bar. Let's just say
low.
No shade to your goal, but it's a great goal, and it's a low bar.
That's it. I just want everyone to be like, I had fun. It doesn't have to be like, I laughed so hard I peed my pants, or my stomach hurts. That's great if that happens. But I'm like, do you feel like shit right now? No? Okay. I am going to sign up, because I actually do have of course I have a podcast and a screenplay. Of course I do. Yeah. Of course you do. Of course I do. Yeah, it's obligatory.
You're perfect.
If you're doing, if you're just, your stand-up, you're like, I have a screenplay and I have an hour and I have a podcast. Anyway.
Right. And do we have coffee? Are you a producer? You're right.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Are you an agent?
Yeah. I'm ready. I'm ready to go. No, I just need to learn the skills.
Let's do it.
I need to learn the skills. I am so happy to have you on. It's been so great to meet you. I hope I can come to New York and see you in person. I would love that.
I'm here. That'd be great. I also live Canada. Maybe I'll be in Canada more often if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, come on up. I'll get you on my Women's Monthly. You can just tell a story, or you can do stand-up. You can do whatever you want. You can host, whatever you like. We're at the last question of Co-Medicine, and I asked the same question of all my guests. And even though you were our first non-medical guest, but our ultimate medical guest is Ken Jeong. And so I get all my guests for the last question just to ask Ken Jeong, just to invite him to come on the show.
Okay, right. Yes. You should come on the show, Ken Jeong, because I promise you, when you leave, you will not feel like shit.
Oh, yeah.
Low bar, but it's true, right? And for those of you following along at home, that was a callback. That is a technique that you will learn when you take our stand-up boot camp class.
Yes, very satisfying.
Oh, but man, I mean, just from my heart, what a you would be the best guest. Oh my God, it's perfect. I can't believe I didn't think. I mean, I know that's your last question, but I lack the words. It's inevitable that he will be a guest. It's inevitable. Just like when you hear about a new show and you're like, of course that's got to be a show. How come that hasn't happened before? It's inevitable, doctor. It's inevitable.
Okay, I love that, because that's kind of your whole ethos. So I like the inevitability. It's just like, this is what we're doing, Ken. Stop fighting it. Why are you fighting it?
It's just here we are.
Okay, Lynn Harris. Well, I've loved talking to you. Thank you so much for being a guest on Co-Medicine.
Thanks for having me.
And that wraps up another episode of Co-Medicine. Thank you so much for listening. It is great having you here. If you have been listening to Co-Medicine from the beginning, thank you. If you're new to Co-Medicine, thank you, and welcome to our Co-Medicine community. It is wonderful to have you here. I want to just give a shout out to Mark Edwards, who wrote the music for Co-Medicine. He's a comedian, an actor, a musician. He's going to be famous, you guys. And then you'll be like, is that the same Mark Edwards? And I'll be like, yeah. He's my friend, you guys. I know him. And he wrote the song. He's amazing. Also, big shout out to Dustin Bays. Thank you for editing the show and producing it. I appreciate you, because I don't know how to do that stuff and I don't want to learn. Yes, it's willful ignorance, I think, at this point, but I'm so glad Dustin is here with me, helping me out with the show. And thank you for being here. If you enjoyed this episode, please like it, share it, do all the things, review it. If you're a sponsor or a potential sponsor, call me. That would be great. If you don't like the show, I don't know why you're still here.